In this video, we're just going to go over a continued example of the array list. So again, the array list, when we instantiate it, is going to look something like this. So we're going to have an array list, and we're going to have our type in here. In this case, we're going to use a string because that's a really common object you're going to be using a lot. You should get really familiar with strings in general. And we're just going to call it a list. And we're going to have a new instantiation of this array list with 10, with a size of 10, okay? So we have array list with our open bracket, or again, these are the less than or equal to brackets. So array list, that bracket, string, closing bracket, and then we're going to have our variable name, which in this case is list, and then the new keyword with array list, the open and closed brackets. Again, you can put the type into those brackets again, that's fine. And then have the size, the initial allocation, the initial capacity for this object within the parentheses. Now, when we want to access or modify values into this array list, it's important that you do this in the right way. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. And the first way we're going to talk about is the add method. So again, we're going to work with this example of the list this whole time. So add. So this allows us to add a value. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to say list dot add. And in here, we need to put the indice where we want to add our value. So let's say we wanted indice 3. And then we're going to put the actual value we want to add. So this could be a variable that holds the value, or this could be our actual string that we want to put in if it's hard-coded, right? So we're going to hard-code that in there, that we're going to have 3 being added to position 3. Now what this does, all right, is this shifts if there is already something at position 3. So if something is at position 3, then this will shift all the values over 1. So for example, if we had, we're going to use green here for this diagram. So if we had something that looked like this as an array, hold on. Okay, and we want to make this into a table here. We want multiple positions. All right, so if we had a value in here of, let's say we had something at position 3. So position 3 in this case, indice 3. Right, this is, we have indices 0, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I don't want them to be in there, no. Zero, 1, 2, and 3. So if we had that, right, when we go, let's say we already had a value at position 1, all right? So let's say that we had a value of high in position 1, okay? And we said that we wanted to add another value to there. What's going to happen is we're just going to take this and we're going to move it. We are going to move it, if it will let me. It does not want to let me move it. Okay, but if we wanted to move it, we would shift high over into position 2, and then the position 1 would get our new value of hello. All right, And this is true regardless of the type, right? This isn't going to happen just because it's a string. And this is also going to be true regardless of where you put it in that array list. So if you want to add a value, it's going to shift everything over. You're not going to overwrite things. Now this becomes a problem when you already have values in your array, right? You're thinking, well, what's going to happen to that last value? So if you wanted to add a value, let's see if I can copy this here. Let's copy, and then we're going to paste down here. All right, so let's say that we had something at 3, right? Let's say we had the value x at 3. What's going to happen is it's just going to add on to this another position in the array. We're just going to add another spot, and all of these values, we're going to move this a little bit because it added them in the wrong spot. Let's see if I can actually fix that. Yeah, there we go. What it's going to do is it's going to take this x and it's going to move it into this last position here. And then it's just going to overwrite this position with our new value. So let's say that new value is y. All right, and that's basically how that array list works. It just shifts it down so that we're not losing any of our existing values. Now this is a little bit of a problem if you actually do want to overwrite those values. So how do we overwrite a position at indice 1? Well, then what we want to do there is we want to do a set. All right, so we're going to call set. And what we're going to do with set is we say list dot set, and we're going to have the indice again. So let's just say we had indice 3. We're going to stick with our example, and we're going to say we want to set it to high so that we put the value in there that we want it to be. All right, and that doesn't shift anything over. That doesn't potentially create new space in the array, nothing like that. This just overwrites a current value. Now, if we want to get a particular value, so to retrieve, we do a get, which is pretty similar to our setters and getters that we had before, right? We're just going to say list dot get, and we're going to say the indice, so in this case 3, and that's it. That's all you do. We are getting a value, so we don't actually need to include a value in that method call. And the next thing that we have is to put the size, to get the size. So if you want to know how big your array is, we are going to do list dot, and I think it's just list dot size, but I want to make sure here. I'm checking my notes. Yeah, it's list dot size. So these methods are pretty straightforward, and once you are familiar with them, they're pretty, I would say, self-evident what they're supposed to be doing. The only thing that's not necessarily intuitive is that add versus set. All right, so these are really important. This add versus set. Right? So you're going to want to make sure that you understand the difference between these two because they are so similar in concept, right? The add puts in a new value, the set sets a particular indice to a particular value. So those are going to be really important differences there. And you're going to want to make sure that you know the size limits of your array list so you can get values at different positions. That's when you're going to use the size method. And you also have the get method for getting that particular value at a particular indice. The other thing that I want to show you next is the for each loop with this. Now there is a section in the book on vectors, which I am going to skip over. If you want to know more about vectors, they behave very similarly to array lists, but are a little bit different. But we're going to go over how to write a for each loop using an array list in the next video.